want to hear what they are for sure. Yes. Shana Tova. I just want to look at you all for a minute. I play piano with my eyes closed a lot, so I haven't really taken you in yet. It's such an honor to be with you as we come to this new moon of Tishrei. The days are cooling dramatically right now. And here we are together, this body of people, aligning ourselves with the cycles of the moon and the earth. And we're just going to call this day the first day of the new year. Here we are. So, some recent news on my end. I want to tell you all how excited I am to be studying in the Magidic training program with the amazing Magida Havurah and Rabbi David as my teachers. I'm so grateful to you both. It's really fun, and we are totally blessed in this community to be in the presence of like a master of Magidut, of Jewish storytelling. So I just happened to land here in the right place 9 years ago and make my way slowly over that time into the learning with these teachers. And I don't mean to give away all your secrets, Debbie, but I want to tell a little bit about what we learned on that first retreat. Debbie has many tricks of the trade of storytelling, which really illuminated me in that first drop-in together. We came to the Havurah, and the 12 students in the class spent 4 days learning with Rabbi David and Debbie. And in that first drop-in, Devor told a story about a storyteller. And I loved it. I loved that story so much. I'm going to find ways to use it for sure. But after she told the story in the way that she tells, she handed out a copy of the text of the story. And we got to look at the text and see what did she create as she told the story that wasn't on the paper. And what dialogue did she add in that wasn't there? And what things did she kind of minimize and drop back to the background so that she could reach her audience with whatever lens of the prism of that story felt the best. And as I listened to her and looked at the text, I got really excited. I wasn't sure how I was going to sit with the storytelling art, but the discovery that I was going to get to be a part of the stories I told, even if they were already printed in text on a piece of paper, felt so exciting to me. So with my new Magid lenses on and all polished up, Rabbi David said, "You'll give the Devar Torah at Rosh Hashannah," and I almost went crazy. It was very intense because Rabbi David is teaching us about studying the roots of the Hebrew words. So every word I read in this parsha, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's a whole other thing. I had to make a list on the side and just kind of try to keep going with the thread that was most strongly calling to me. But I think the moral is you should just be careful going into anything in Bereshit, in the beginning of the Torah, because it's like every word is this mytho-poetic portal, and it's just a little too much. But I put on my scuba gear, and I got ready, and I took a deep dive into the story of Hagar. That's the aliyah that I am reading today a little bit. It starts with Abraham waking up in the morning and taking Hagar and Ishmael out to the edge of the wilderness. So this woman, Hagar, her name could be translated as Hagar, the stranger, the other. Who is this woman of our Torah narrative? She's given by Pharaoh as a maidservant to Sarah and Abraham. She speaks with angels. She carries and births the firstborn son of Avraham Avinu. She's told by an angel of Elohim, or maybe several angels, that her son will become the father of a great nation. And she's one of the only women in the Torah who gives God a name. And the name she gives God is so beautiful. She calls God Lachai Ro'i, the life that sees, or that sees me. The life that sees me. and her son Ishmael would grow up to become the father of the Islamic religion. That's no small feat, right? This guy. And I feel pretty familiar with her, as many of you probably do, from the narrative of the Torah reading that we read every time this year on Rosh Hashannah. We come back to this story. But this year, as I sent her name off into Google, that's how we do, right? We have all these books. I'm like, which book should I look at? I have to ask Google first. As I sent her off, I was really moved to find not only a breadth of commentary from the Jewish tradition about her, but this whole other telling of the story of Hagar, or Hajar, as she is known in the sacred teachings of our Islamic brothers and sisters. The Torah writes, Avraham rose early in the morning and took bread and water and gave them to Hagar. He placed them on her shoulder along with the child. She wandered astray into the wilderness of Beersheba. In the Torah's account, no words are spoken at this moment by anyone. He gives her the provisions and the boy, and away they go. I always felt this sort of strange, sad silence there. But the Muslim commentary paints a different picture. Here it is. Abraham, after having wandered with Hagar and Ishmael, left them there with a skin of water and a leather bag full of dates. As Abraham began walking away, leaving them behind, Hagar became anxious about what was happening. Abraham did not look back. Hagar chased him. Abraham, where are you going, leaving us in this valley, where there is no person whose company we may enjoy, nor is there anything here? Abraham hurried his pace. Finally, Hagar asked, Has God asked you to do this? Abraham stopped, turned back, and said, Yes. Hagar asked, Abraham, to whom are you leaving us? I am leaving you to God's care, Abraham replied. And Hagar said, I am satisfied to be with God. There's something wonderful in this conversation. It makes sense to me. This woman, just a few parshiot ago, talked to maybe 4 or 5 different angels. She gives God the name, L'chai Roi, the life that sees me. She's been living in the house of Abraham and Sarah, and these two are super up close and personal with the Holy One, and they spend a lot of time talking to God. She gets it. She gets the power of this guide, this force, this L'chai Roi. And so I love this line, I am satisfied to be with God. It seems to give her a different understanding of the nature of her journey and equips her with a strength and an inner knowing that will help her. Imagine if in your most challenging moments you had the sense that you were with God, maybe even closer than ever, and that you, like Hagar, could face the wilderness, the desolate wilderness of your life bravely with that depth of knowing. And yet, even with this depth of spiritual foundation, we can also imagine the breaking heart of Hagar and the body exhausted and hungry and hot. No Wi-Fi reception for her GPS out there in the wilderness. It would be easy to get lost. And so we read in the Torah, she wandered astray into the wilderness of Beersheba. Beersheba. This name seems important. As Rabbi David taught me in the Magid program, all names are important in the Torah. The well of Sheva, of 7. The well of rest, Shabbat. The well of shatterings, Shavarim. The well of return, Teshuvah. That's what we're up to right now, right? Returning. In Tishrei, the 7th month of the Hebrew calendar, blowing the Shavarim blast on the shofar. So how is Sheva going to be a part of the story of Hagar? The Quranic commentary tells it this way. Soon the water and dates were gone, and Hagar's desperation increased. Unable to quench her thirst and unable to breastfeed her baby, Hagar began searching for water. She left Ishmael under a tree, and she began climbing the rocky incline of a nearby hill. Maybe there's a caravan passing by, she thought to herself. She ran between the two hills of Safa and Marwa 7 times, looking for signs of water or help. She ran between the two hills of Safa and Marwa 7 times, looking for signs of water or help. That's a very different storyline, don't you think, Torah? How does it feel to see Hagar become so active here? How does it feel to imagine this mother reaching to the depths of her soul to keep faith, to keep hope alive? To see her embody the song that we sing, Kaveh el Adonai chazak v'yametz libecha, keep hope in the Holy One, and you will be given strength of heart. How does that feel? To me, it feels powerful and empowering and true to the strength I have seen in so many mothers facing difficult times. The annual Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca is called the Hajj, and it's required at least once in a lifetime by those of the Muslim faith. Pilgrims gather in the great mosque in Mecca for this festival, 6 days. Upon arrival, the pilgrim begins the ritual of tawaf, or walking 7 times counterclockwise around the Kaaba, symbolic of the house of Allah. After a pilgrim completes tawaf, they perform sa'i, running or walking very quickly 7 times between the hills of Safa and Marwa, imitating the faith and the hope of Hagar. And I'm talking about the actual hills. These giant rocks, previously out in the open air, are now enclosed by the great mosque. And you can go on YouTube and enjoy watching people hustle back and forth 7 times between these 2 hills. Each of these rituals is connected to the story of our sister Hagar. And each is a physically embodied action done to remember the fierce love of a mother. To honor and thank the force of that love is needed now. For human beings to emulate, cultivate, and activate the strength of that love within ourselves is needed now. Yes. The idea that we can make this a pillar of our spiritual lives, call me crazy. I love it. I love it. The story is told differently in the Torah. When the water was empty from the water skin, Hagar cast the child into the shade of a bush and sat across from him, the distance of 2 bow shots away. And she said, "Let me not see the death of the child." She lifted up her voice and wept. Vateshev mineged v'tisa et kola v'tefk. She lifted up her voice and she wept. Vateshev, she sat, she rested, she shattered across from him, and she lifted her voice and wept. Can you feel her there? In the heat, in the hopeless despair, in the depth of her sorrow, shattered, really tshuva, really tshuva. Nothing left of the ego at that point. No hope, no push for it to be any other way, an acceptance, a collapse, and the tears of that place. And in the very next phrase, Vayishma Elohim el kol hana'ar, God heard the voice of the child. But who is the child likely crying for? What is the comfort and assurance that he seeks? What is his rock? His l'chai roi, the life that sees me, if not his own mother, And this is the primal and primary cry, the child's cry, the cry of the shofar. This mother-child bond, the first I-thou relationship model for us human beings. And God hears Ishmael crying for his mother. And he sends an angel, a malach, or messenger of Elohim. I like this part. What does the malach say to Hagar? Lest you imagine that the Torah lacks a sense of humor or the ability to make a pun. The malach says to Hagar, Malach, Hagar. This is a complete Mel Brooks movie scene in my mind. As I read this part in the Torah so many times, I'm like, he really says malach. That's so funny. Malach, what's going on? How's it going? Right? Malach. Which is, just as an aside, it's a great thing to think of what is going on, malach, as always an angel, a malach, a messenger. Malach, Hagar, what's going on here? And the malach says, and I'm paraphrasing just a little, he says, go put your hands on your child. Lift him up. Remember, I told you, I will make him a great nation. He has a destiny, a life to live. It's not his time to die. And then, Vayifkach Elohim et eneha, vatirei be'emayim. God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She saw the well of water. In the Islamic story, Hagar sees the angel Gabriel standing next to Ishmael at the completion of her 7th ascent in search of help. The angel taps the ground with his wing, and a well of water so abundant gushes from the earth. The flow is so strong that Hagar shouts, Zam, Zam, to try and stop the water. Sounds a little bit like the word simsum, contract, contain. Zam, Zam, stop, too much water. According to this legend, the well of Zam Zam is still flowing today, housed in the lower floor of the great mosque in Mecca. And as pilgrims complete the tafwa and sa'eh, they drink from it. The power of the great mother still bubbling up from deep in the bedrock to bring her chai, her life force, to the surface, to show us in the most direct way that we are seen and we are loved. So the moral of the story is, don't join the Magid training program unless you want to have a really hard time keeping your Devar Torah under 10 minutes. I think I almost did it. Or maybe this is how I felt as I was going through this parsha. So many narratives, so little time. Because it's so true, right? I mean, you get this little piece of text, and from this minimal, the Torah is kind of minimal, from this minimal text, commentary upon commentary, narrative upon narrative, have already been created, and every time we engage, we create again. And we are about to be creatively written into the Sefer HaChaim, the book of life. The book of life. Life that sees me. And what are we going to suggest for inclusion? What will we hope to have emphasized? And what edits might you like to see this year? This is the season for rewrites. This is the season for rewrites. This is the season for deeper prayer, tzedakah, righteous giving, and acts of kindness. This is the time to search for the narratives we've been living this past year. You know what they are. Turn them over, reflect, maybe add some new commentary that carries you in the direction of your tshuva. Anything that involves shinvav, shev, rest, return, and maybe even a little shattering, until we're renewed and ready to write on blank pages of pure potential. Check in on the stories you've been telling and retelling. Is there some new perspective, insight, or learning for you? when you broaden your lens a little bit to consider for a moment a different version of the poem of your own life, a new translation perhaps. May you be inscribed in the book of life, in the fresh white pages of this year, in goodness and in sweetness, and may sacred wells be revealed to you when your thirst is very great. Shana Tova.